Okay, so Iris is not here. Who wants to read the summary?
I'll read it, no problem.
Go on.
Pekudei, in a nutshell. An accounting is made of the gold, silver, and copper donated by the people for the making of the Mishkan, Betzalel. Haloev and their assistants make the 8 priestly garments: the apron, the breastplate, the cloak, crown, hat, tunic, sash, and breeches, according to the specifications communicated to Moses in Parashat Tetzaveh. The Mishkan is completed, and all of its components are brought to Moses, who erects it and anoints it with the holy anointing oil, and initiates Aaron and his 4 sons into the priesthood. A cloud appears over the Mishkan, signifying the divine presence that has come to dwell within it.
Right, thank you. Sorry about the psychedelic picture in the back there, but if I open the blind, it's worse. So you're getting a moire effect, I think it's called. Okay, so quite a short part actually, because it's not so short, but it's often read with Vayakhel together. Hi, Beryl. Good morning. So yeah, quite short. Now it's all about accounting. Maybe this is why Jews become accountants. Someone once said, "Whoops, what just happened there?" Nope. Oh, sorry. Okay, maybe that's why we become accountants. But besides for that, there's something else going on as well in this week's Sedra. So let's talk about charity.
Was it the Aaron's sons that were destroyed?
No, that's coming up in a couple of weeks' time. That's in Shmini.
Not
yet. Not yet. Let's
Okay.
read a little bit about these contributions. So
We were talking, Rabbi, where did they get all the gold and the silver and the jewellery from?
we know the answer to that.
Did they get it when
They cleaned out Egypt, didn't they? They cleaned out Egypt during the.
No, that's what I said, but everyone was arguing with me. They said they had them from when they hid them from the Egyptians, but they cleared out Egypt.
Right, they took them from the Egyptians.
Yeah.
Well, it says they asked them officially by Ishalu. They asked permission to borrow, but then they didn't return. So people were asked, right, we talked about this last week, to give gold, silver, copper, wool, linen, animal skins, acacia wool, oil, spices, incense, precious stones. And was it, all those horrible jokes which I always think sound very anti-Semitic, about the chap that's choking and the guy that comes up to him and gives him the Heimlich maneuver, and someone says, "That's incredible. How do you know how to squeeze people so hard?" And he says, "I work for UJIA," right? I think it's basically anti-Semitic. But anyway, so let's look at this. Did Moshe have to squeeze these people? Let's have a look. Who'd like to read? Number 1.
I'll read.
Volunteer?
Go
on, Jeff.
The people continued bringing Moses additional gifts every morning. So all the skilled workers who were doing all the work on the sanctuary left what they were doing and said to Moses, "The people are bringing more than enough for the work God has commanded us to do." Moses ordered an announcement to be made throughout the camp: "Let no man or woman make anything more as an offering for the sanctuary." And so the people brought no more, because what they already had was more than enough for all the work that was to be done.
Okay, this is this famous thing, first time in history that they had to close a campaign because they got too much in, right? I did actually think of a parallel, which is at the beginning of the current war, some collections for Israel made incredible amounts of stuff, but I mean, they managed to ship everything, but it was, phenomenal. So the craftsmen, Batalon and Oliav had to turn around to Moshe and say, "You've got to stop people they're bringing too many materials. We don't have space to use them all. We can't use them all. Right? It's too much. Tell them to stop." What a contrast. Until now, every time we read about the children of Israel, they're busy complaining and they're moaning and they're grumpy and they're quarrelsome, and they don't seem like people that would be desperate to give. They're very good at taking. Right? And suddenly they're giving. Now, we learned about this once, I think, maybe recently, actually, possibly Truma, in the last few weeks. And we talked about the fact that when they were given a project to work on, It's like sometimes, if you give a class of school children a project to do together, team building, right? You get people, why they get people to do things like, I don't know, build bridges over rivers and things, because when you have a project to do, it channels everything, it focuses your energy, right? Why they get prisoners in chain gangs to use their energy in positive ways. So there is that aspect of it. But besides for that, suddenly they're longing to give. Now, did they always give for the right reasons? What happened in Cedra 2 weeks ago? Well, not 2 weeks ago, last week. So not 2 days ago. They also gave some gold. Do you remember what it was for?
Not the calf.
Yeah, right? Who said the calf?
I did, Jeff.
Right. So they gave gold to the eagle, to the golden calf. So it's like many things. There's giving and there's giving, right? There's giving to like people say now, want to support a charity. I want to support the, whatever, people in the Middle East. Okay, who are you giving to? Because not all the places you give to are necessarily the smartest thing to give to. So the story there was they're anxious. Moshe hasn't returned. Is he still alive? Has something happened to him? How will we get the word of God? Excuse me. I know the golden calf is usually referred to as an idol, but if we actually look at the text, it was a replacement for Moshe. It was something that was supposedly going to be, it doesn't make any sense, but was going to convey the word of God to them. They didn't worship it as a god. They saw it as an intermediary, an oracle, an object which would cause divine instruction to be heard. Now, Aaron, I was asked this at lunch a couple of weeks ago. How come Aaron gets off scot-free almost? So when he seems to be an instigator, so there's two things. Number one, we know that when you have a baying mob, it can be very, very dangerous. Think of Lord of the Flies, right? So when you have a group of people get whipped up into a frenzy, they can do all kinds of things wouldn't normally do. It's also the mob mentality, right? One teenager on their own might be okay, but 20 teenagers bored hanging around outside a shop at 10 o'clock at night can be quite intimidating, even if they're not doing any harm. So,
Rabbi, can I ask something? There was a lot.
so Aaron,
Rabbi, can I ask something?
yeah,
Yeah, there was a lot of jewelry and gold. How did they carry it all out when all they had was like bags on their back?
that I don't know. But remember, the thing about jewelry is it's quite small but high in value. So it's
but for what they made with all what they made from the Kohanim last week, and the
rings from their ears. It was their earrings.
Yeah, you needed a lot of jewelry, a lot of.
That's a good question. Remember, there were 600. Well, remember there were 600,000 people. They didn't all take part, by the way. But
Well, no, there was only so many that left Egypt, wasn't it? And then they multiplied in the desert, didn't they?
By the time of Matan Torah, we're told there were 600,000, right? So it's quite a lot of people. So I don't think they had a shortage. And if you think about it, it's a bit like nowadays you hear about people say, how come, if you want to register for asylum, or whatever, you have to have a smartphone. And be like, how come refugees who have nothing, they don't take anything with them, but they have a smartphone? So I suppose the equivalent would be that people had earrings. They didn't have lots of possessions, but they had their earrings and their rings. So why is Aaron seemingly so on board with it? So besides the fact that he says he feared for his life, the classic explanation is that he thought that these people being so grumpy and selfish normally, once you say to them, people say, we need something we can worship. We need something that can replace Moshe for us. Once you say to them, take off your rings, they'll be like, excuse me? No, thank you. Don't touch my rings. Right? And that obviously a miscalculation. You would think, and the family, everyone's going to argue and, say that's our family heirloom. Don't you start giving that away. I think I probably told the story that there's a customer at Pigeon Aben. I don't know. I've only had one Pigeon Aben, which is Ellie's, and I don't get to go to very many. But there's a custom, I don't know if it's a Chabad custom or a universal custom, to put the boy on a silver tray and then to put jewelry with. People take off their jewelry and put it. I think it's all to do with this, and probably.
Yeah, we had two Pigeon Abens, one for Ben and one for Zach.
Right.
our grandson, and we had silver trays. And Max, I didn't have it when Ben was there, but he actually bought silver coins,
So
which were
that's for the
in a
comb.
is a
Right.
presentation thing.
Right. So that's very nice. So that's for the comb. That's also minhag to put jewelry alongside the baby on the on the silver tray. So it's probably connected to this. It's to make atonement for the calf when they gave their jewelry for the wrong reasons. So we made an announcement, at least speaking of Ben, there is a custom for people to place jewelry basically on the baby, effectively, like next to the baby. And if anyone would like to do so, you're very welcome to. We thought no one in their right mind is going to take off their wedding ring or their bracelet. But actually people did it. And I'm assuming they all got it back afterwards because I didn't get any complaints. So Aaron's thinking is that when you ask people to give jewelry, you ask people, right? You know, it's like I love that there's a I don't remember who his name is. I've told the story at Colin Day before. Tapud was originally from Russia, and he said that his grandfather, his Zaid, always told the story that they had a family friend that came over to Russia in, I don't know, 1900 or whatever, and they had a small farm. And one day the farm burned down. Right? I don't know if deliberately or because their whole livelihood was up in flames, right? Gone up in flames. And all the people in the shtetl were coming round. It was like a shiver house. And they all come around, we're saying, we're so sorry, we're so sorry. Oi, oi, we're so sorry for your loss. And he says, his Zayda comes round with whatever, I don't know, 20 rubles. And he said he had a real accent. He says, I'm sorry, 20 rubles. How much are you guys really sorry? Right? So it's easy to be sorry. It's much harder to put your money where your mouth is. So Aaron's thinking is the people might be moaning, but he actually asked them to put their hands in their pockets. We know what people are like, right? So of course, what happened? It backfired, didn't it? They gave willingly, right? Let's see the next two. Right, who'd like to read that? This is what Aaron said to them.
I'll
Go
read
on,
it.
Brenda.
Take off the gold rings from the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me.
Right. So besides the explanation, he was fearful for his life. Classic explanation is he said this almost in a way of, go on then, take off your jewelry and bring it to me. Um, but it backfired, of course, because that's what they did. Yeah, they did exactly that. Let's see the next source. Brenda, do you want to carry on?
Yeah. So all the people took the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron.
Right. So look at these people. By the way, there is a concept of misplaced chesed, right? Chesed is kindness, right? You know that classic story about the butterfly. Someone sees a butterfly struggling to get out of a chrysalis, and they help it out, and by helping it, basically gets out too early, and it's not fully formed, right? We see a child trying to do something, you want to help them finish the task, but actually sometimes your kindness is misplaced because your kindness actually is, or is it if you're cruel, kind to the cruel, you'll be cruel to the kind, or whatever it is. Basically, your kindness is misplaced, right? You know, you see an addict who's desperate for the next fix, and you give it to them. That's misplaced chesed, right? A child who needs boundaries, but you're too soft, is misplaced chesed. So that you can give to the wrong things, right? 100%. You can be charitable to the wrong things. So we see that. Bnei Yisrael, they are, for all their faults of being stiff-necked people, they are naturally giving people. They give to the Mishkan to the extent that they have to be told to stop. It's too much. But then, unfortunately, if this was a character assassination, you'd say that's no proof. They gave to the golden calf. They just give to whatever cause is going. These people, right? So it's a rather peculiar thing. It's a character trait, right? Which can be channeled into the wrong things. But at least, it's an interesting one. You could say that about, I don't know, somebody that decides to give to some dodgy charity or something. You'd say, well, at least he's a generous person, but it's unfortunate that he's giving to this particular Hamas charity. But if we could persuade him to give, to the shul, can you imagine how much he would give as opposed to someone that doesn't give at all? Right? You possibly learned about this early on in the Tanya class. The difference between someone who does an Aveira, sins, and somebody who is passive and does nothing. So there is a principle that says that when a person does teshuva, they transform their sins from negative into positive, right? That seems like a rather strange thing. Whereas someone who who doesn't do a mitzvah just missed out. So, for example, you're supposed to say Shema every night, right? Certain time after it gets dark, before bed, whatever, but after it gets dark. So you're telling me the person who misses Shema every night because they don't say it
Sorry.
is worse than the person that goes out and eats a cheeseburger on Yom Kippur. So the answer is they're not worse in terms of, if you're looking at the actual actions, because the latter person is proactively sinning, whereas the other one is just missing opportunities. But you miss an opportunity, you can never make it up. What teshuvah are you going to do for missing Shema tonight? Whereas if you ate treif and you do sincere teshuvah, it says that it's as if you ate kosher. That's a pretty powerful thing. So the same thing can easily be channeled into positive or negative, right? So this natural giving, this nature to give, is wonderful. They give so much to the Mishkan, they have to be stopped. But at the same time, it also has a dark side to it because they also readily give to the golden calf because they are just a naturally giving people, right? You could ask yourself, scratch your head and say, what strange people, right? But it's not a new question. Let's see what the Talmud had to say. The Jerusalem Talmud, Yerushalmi, in Shkolim. Shkolim is a tractate which talks all about the half shekel, right? Very topical because it was done around this time of year and how the money was raised. So it's basically a Masech that deals a lot with taxes and raising money for community chest. So let's have a look. Let's see what it says. Who'd like to read?
I
Pam, would
will.
you? Yeah.
Yeah. One cannot understand the nature of this people. If they are appealed for a calf, they give. If appealed for the tabernacle, they give.
Right, it's like these people in the sugar, right? They give to the Mishkan, but they give to idols as well. Like, what's wrong with these people? By the way, you have people like that nowadays, right? People say, they give to Jewish causes, they also give to all kinds of weird and wonderful causes. Because you have people who just give, that's what they do. And it's always a discussion, if we start raising money for a new charity, will the old charities miss out? And there does need to be a school of thought that says people who are generous, I mean, obviously there's a limit, but people who are generous, that's what they do. They're generous, and therefore they're going to be generous. They'll be generous anyway. So the fact that they gave to one cause doesn't mean they won't give to one other cause necessarily. Okay, so yeah, it said almost tongue in cheek, like in wonder, like look at these people, you can't understand them, or maybe you can't understand them. You have a natural, in the same way you can have a person who gives in an unhealthy way, right? They spoil their child, or they give in too easily. They dispense chesed or they help people in a way that people become too dependent. It's also unhealthy, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm just tired.
All these Jewish mothers that parent their adult children, it's also unhealthy. I say, I'm just giving. I'm a mother. I like to give. Yeah, but sometimes you have to pull back and let go. So we like giving. It's a natural thing. So we might make bad choices, but we are naturally people of chesed. Anyone know where that originates or why? Let's see the sources. Here's just underlying it. This is what the Rambam has to say in his halachas of matanas aniyim, which is basically gifts to the poor. So various things, tzedakah, and also the various tithes and so on, that which was given to the poor. Right. So let's see. Number 5, who'd like to read?
Oh, I'll do it again.
Go on.
We have never seen or heard about a Jewish community which does not have a charity fund.
Excuse me, sorry. And this is, if you ask people nowadays, the Jewish community is known for their philanthropy, like Ram says in his time. Back in the day, every community had a gemach. They had funds, they had free loan funds, they had charity funds that would help people. It was a basic part of Jewish life. Right? The fact that it's now a whole regulated thing of multi-million-pound charities, but the idea of giving to charity, and the reason people are often charitable beyond their numbers in the Jewish community is because it is a central pillar of Judaism. It's a central value. You couldn't conceive of a community without a structure of charitable support, right? Nowadays, you think of how many Jewish charities there are that do so many wonderful things, but it's not a new phenomenon. Right? The idea of giving and having charitable organizations set up, whether it's to provide food, whether it's to provide medical care, whether it's to provide financial support, or whatever it is not a new one. Let's see what Rambam has to say further on about where this quality comes from. So perhaps I shouldn't use the word chesed rather than the word tzedakah, really, because when they gave to the Mishkan, I suppose the equivalent nowadays, you say, you know,
Oh, Rabbi.
okay, for charity donation, yeah, I woke up very early today. You know, I gave a charity donation, I gave tzedakah. So let's use the word tzedakah rather than chesed, although sometimes they're interchangeable. So let's see what the Rambam says. Go on, who hasn't read yet? Julian, have you read?
Okay. We are obligated to be more scrupulous in fulfilling the commandment of tzedakah than any other positive commandment, because tzedakah is the sign of the righteous person, a descendant of Abraham our father, as it is said, "For I know him, that he will command his children to do tzedakah." If someone is cruel and does not show mercy, there are sufficient grounds to suspect his lineage, since cruelty is found only among the other nations. Whoever refuses to give charity is called Belial, the same term which is applied to idol worshippers.
Right. He says also, right, it says that Baishanim Rachmanim says that we are Baishanim is like people who are not ashamed, but it's people who are like some type of humility, Rachmanim. We are merciful. So it says that if you see a person who's not charitable, who's not kind, who's cruel, then you should suspect that you should question his yichus. You should say, you know, what kind of a Jew are you? A Jew is supposed to be someone that gives to others and is kind and caring. And if you're not, there must be something wrong with you. That's quite a heavy accusation to make. It's quite racist as well, but
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing. So, because it says of Avram that he will command his children to do tzedakah. So this is a basic function. So on the one hand, the calf is a bad thing, but on the other hand, you see the irony, right? You know, here's the irony that it is a basic part of our DNA to be charitable. Right? Maybe that's why also Jews give disproportionately to other charities. You know, it's sometimes frustrating when you see someone's given $1 billion to, you know, I don't know, what is it, can't remember that the Smithsonian Museum or something, but you know, they don't give anything to the local Jewish charities. You know, you have that phenomenon as well. So this is a quality that comes from Avram. It's a quality that's a basic quality, and the other point is we see how it can be misused, right? Unfortunately. So people appeal to our charitable nature, right? That could mean in terms of money, it could mean in terms of just giving, being naturally giving. People can appeal to our charitable nature, and sometimes it can be abused. It can be taken advantage of, unfortunately. So Rabbi Sachs points out that you have two seas, right, in the land of Israel, inland. You have the Galil and the Yam HaMelech, the Dead Sea, right? And the Dead Sea, of course, is nothing grows in it, right? The Galilei is full of life. So what's the difference? So the difference is that the Dead Sea receives, it gets water, obviously, from somewhere. It's fed by the Jordan River, but it basically kills everything, right? It doesn't give life. Whereas the Galil receives water, but it also gives water, it gives life. So the challenge is not just to be a taker, but to be a giver as well. So that's why we see that we have such generosity in our communities. The only thing we should remember is that sometimes that generosity can be misplaced as well, whether that's charitable giving, whether that's being merciful to someone one shouldn't be merciful to, right? And there's a few examples of that, right? Those who've learned about, you know, the Tisha B'Av Gemara, where it says that, you know, the chap that they, whether to inform on the chap was going to inform on them, and you know whether they should they basically stop him, and if necessary kill him to stop him from endangering all those Jews. And Zachari ben Avkanos, I think it was, said no, we should have mercy on him. And the Gemara says that his misplaced mercy basically brought destruction and terror upon the Jewish people. Right? Sometimes your misplaced mercy and kindness, unfortunately, can lead to disaster. But it's a basic quality we have. It goes back to Avram. We see from the calf how easily it can be abused, misused, channeled into the wrong things. So we always have to make sure that we're careful that we channel it into the right things, that when we give to others, it's in the right framework and it's for the right reasons. Right, it's a short share today. That's it, I think. Last slide, yeah. There we go. Anyone else want to add anything?
Could I mention something?
Of course.
Regarding the gold, if you go back to Pasha's Bo, Rashi points out that that the people took the leftover matzah and maror on their bodies, on their clothes,
Right.
and they felt that the matzah and the maror that they ate on Leila Seder the night before was more precious to them than the gold and the silver, which they packed in wagons on their
Right.
and in the satchels in their on their horse. So that is so Rashi actually quotes how they brought the gold and the silver out of Mitzrayim. The other thing I wanted to
on that note, it's interesting. You know, would they have known? You know, I don't know if at the time gold and silver would have been seen as very materialistic. But you know, nowadays you say that's very materialistic. But of course, in due course, it came to be a very important thing that was used for kedusha. But would they have necessarily known that? You know, you're saying that the mats and the moral were more precious, but and at the time of building the Mishkan, they would have finally realized why they had to take all that silver and gold. Right? Famous says that gold was only created for the Mishkan. It wasn't created for us to wear too much jewelry and whatever. It was created for the Mishkan, but of course, gets used for other things as well. Sorry, what was your second point? Oh, we've lost you. Yeah. Hello?
Yeah, somebody trying to call me. No, we can assume that that they understood the importance of very much of the gold and the silver, that it was precious because of the promise that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had given originally to Abraham Avinu, that they would come out with a great wealth, meaning the mitzvot, but the people were on a low level, that they were given gold and silver. So I think that they did definitely recognize that that the gold and the silver were of great materialistic value. The other thing I wanted to mention, talking about the gold, was in Pashas Kisisa. So Rashi and the Orach Chaim also mentions that that Aaron told the men to go to the wives to take the gold earrings and other things that were on the outside of their bodies, and they came and grabbed them off of the women, which seems to suggest that the women were not to blame at all.
Participants, right?
That the women were completely innocent. And it's fascinating that in last week's Pasha, Rashi also points out the women gave with like all their heart gold and copper to the Mishkan.
Right. And of course the mirrors that we use.
Yeah, so the copper mirrors. So the question is obviously asked: how comes the women still had gold, if the husbands had grabbed all of the gold for the Egel? So Rashi answers that they had kept gold underneath their clothes,
Yeah.
and the source for this
Yeah.
is Shabbos 65 B, which goes into detail that the
Right.
that the gold that they had underneath their clothes was of the same use as the copper mirrors. It was used to entice
the husbands.
husbands to multiply. That was something I
Actually,
want
I only,
to mention, that the
yeah.
wives are very much at the forefront, that the women are very much at the forefront
And
of giving the gold and the copper.
not only that, but dare I say, respectfully, their femininity and even their sexuality. And I've never actually thought of this when we learn with couples. I always explain that Judaism has a healthy approach to intimacy. And the first mitzvah in the Torah is to go forth and multiply. It's I think the Siddur of Rabbi Akiva, what's his name? Rabbi Yaakov Emden says that this whole view of everything as being sinful, it's basically a Christian view that's crept into Judaism. And as we all say to you, people mistake modesty for shame. It's not shame, it's modesty that's why we don't parade ourselves in public. But the natural relationship should be a holy and a special one. And actually, the greatest proof of that, besides, as I often say, the fact that Shir Hashirim is written in the language of love, which shows that there's nothing dirty or sinful about lust and not lust, about a healthy physical relationship, because the relationship of God and the Jewish people is expressed in very explicit terms. I always remember as a child growing up, my father would censor the Haggadah where it talks about your bosom blooming, and he would always change that somehow. But I think we just read it in Hebrew. The very fact that the mirrors that they used to basically, yes, to seduce their husbands, because there's nothing wrong with that. It's their husbands, and they wanted to go forth and multiply, became a part of the service in the temple. It's an incredible thing. Incredible
Right,
thing.
Ted.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you went further than I did, because I was sort of I was not sure whether to mention exactly
I think
what
it's
the Gemara
important.
says, that
Yeah,
the Gemara says that they used the gold to decorate and to emboss their the clothes, the underclothes, in order to entice their husbands.
Yeah. Which also shows that people have normal human interactions. That's a quote unquote normal human interaction. I think it's important. I also think it's important because at the end of the day, we get the Hollywood version of things, so we may as well hear the Torah version of things, which is actually just as beautiful and just as, romantic, but in a different way, Lahavdil. So it's very interesting, a very good point. Thank you for that about the gold as well. So it's, all of this is also the idea of taking something which is very material and using it for Kedusha. This is the whole idea of Judaism of sanctifying. In other religions and cultures, you go live on a mountaintop, you live on bread and water. The priests have to be celibate. You have to, reject all material things. In Judaism, we use material things constantly. We use a silver Kiddush cup. We get married and have children, please God. We use alcohol. We use, gold and silver. We use money for good things. We don't shy away from engaging with the physical world. And that's the whole message. And that's the message of the Mishkan as well, on every level. I think it's a very important message. In fact, last week we talked about artistry and the importance of all these things. But it's interesting. I do wonder, it's a bit like in the yeshiva world, boys go through yeshiva with quite a simplistic view of things. And, like they always tell you, it doesn't really, you need to eat food to serve God and to daven. It doesn't really matter whether it's 5-star, Michelin-starred gourmet food. And, the joke always used to be, Bochum shouldn't worry about like what flavor ice cream. That's like you're getting too caught up in the physicality. You should just, not that you should have bread and water, but like shouldn't be such a foodie and like, 5-star restaurants. It's not appropriate for yeshiva bocha. You go, you have some cholent, some kugel, whatever it takes. You have some, you wash and have some bread for breakfast, and that's it. You don't need. And then you get married, and they tell you, when your wife makes food, you should be really excited about the food and compliment her on the recipe and the presentation of the food. You're like, what are you talking about? I don't know about these things. So I wonder if it was a bit the same thing. They knew that silver and gold was important, but did they know it was going to ultimately be used to serve God in the way it was? Which is a very special thing. Anyway, Right, I think we're going to sign off. Thank you, everyone. It's nice to be back to full strength. Very honoured to have people join us all the way from the Holy Land. So, Mordecai, I wish you well, and everyone should be safe and well, along with everyone else. And have a good week, everyone.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. Okay. I'll see you tonight. Deborah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
You come
Okay.
down?
And me.
Oh, lovely.
And
See
you.
you.
I was away last week.
Okay.
Sources
Lovely.
only.
Bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.
See you.
Thank
Bye.
you.